Christians read the Bible, Jews read the Torah, Muslims read the Quran. Do Buddhists have a holy book? Well, in my Buddhist tradition there is such thing, and it is called the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is looked to as the source of Buddha's teaching. Now, at the time when Buddhas lived, writing did not exist, and so it was not taught. As a result, Buddha's teachings were passed on orally for over 400 years. Now, in 29 BCE, the fourth Buddhist council was held in Sri Lanka. There, Buddha followers agreed that his teaching need to be preserved in writing, and so they did, using the Pali language, hence the Pali Canon. Pali Canon is also referred to as Tipitaka, which means tree basket. The three baskets that comprise the canon are the rule of monks and nuns, the teaching of the Buddha, and teaching that came about after Buddha's death that are related to philosophy, psychology, and metaphysics. The second basket, known as the Tipitaka or basket of thread, is probably what is studied by most Buddhists. In this presentation, I will explore the many hidden humor that are found in Sutta Pitaka. Sutta Pitaka has a reputation for being humorless, and it's easy to see why. In some of the passage, the Buddha seemed to regard humor in a bad light. For instance, one of the passages referred to laughing excessively, showing one teeth as a form of silliness, and that when feeling joy, Buddha should simply smile. And then there's the fact that Buddha himself rarely smiles, and when he do in the Pali Canon, the reasons are never funny. There is also the famous words in the canon that seem aimed at all forms of humor. What laughter, why joy, when constantly aflame, enveloped in darkness, don't you look for a lamp? These words basically take a jab to all sort of form of fun, but it doesn't mean that the whole passage is devoid of humor. It is there in the passage, however it often goes unrecognized. Now, one of the reasons why the Pali Canon humor goes unrecognized is because of the style, which is often subtle, deadpan, and dry. This style of humor often goes right past reader in modern cultures, where jokes are often telegraphed well in advance. Another reason is that translators of Pali Canon tend to forget that many passage is meant to be humorous. Instead, they turn it into something one might consider satire. What's distinctive about the canon's humor is that, for the most part, it functions in line with the Buddha's teaching. Thus, the use of humor tend to be subtler than the humor in Torah, which can sometimes be sarcastic and anti-authoritarian. In general, we can say that the humor in canon seems to aim at serving a purpose, which is to obtain spiritual direction and understanding. And one way to achieve that is to view things from a certain distance. As the Buddha say, to gain the knowledge that frees you from attachment to things, you need to view those things as something separate. So a sense of distance is a necessary part of the path, and a sense of humor can be a useful tool in promoting it. The process of separating yourself from an old attachment is easier when you can see, in a good humorous way, how foolish the attachment is. In many passages, the canon's humor often take the form of irony and satire, poking fun at things that people usually take too serious, so that they can learn to view them with healthy detachment. Here's a video clip from one of the lectures by the famous British monk Ajahn Brahm talking about happiness and content. Ajahn
is happiness. So if you're happy, well done. You've made it. You really are successful. Big time. Much more so than if you were a millionaire. Already, that one person asked me, apparently there is another big lottery tomorrow, and they asked me, please, Ajahn Brahm, out of compassion, please, some numbers. And sometimes, monks, monks do have powers. They can do things like that. But we won't do that. No way. If I could, I would not, on principle. Because that won't make you happy. And some people say, come on, Ajahn Brahm, let's try it, prove it. I want to be the test case for you. Give me the numbers, and then we'll prove it. No, it never does make you happy. So there's something else which makes one happy. And what makes one happy is not getting something you don't already have. It's appreciating that what you have is more than enough to be happy right now, with what you have, right now, in this moment. Instead of actually aspiring for things, letting go of aspiring for things and appreciating what you have. Quick saying, it exemplifies Buddhism in one sentence. It's when you want something more, you can't enjoy what you already have. It's a beautiful saying. When you want something more, you're not looking at what you already have and you can't really enjoy it. You can't appreciate it. So, the person you're living with, your partner, she may not be the most beautiful, he may not be the most hot, but he's good enough, for goodness sake. And if you really don't want anything more, it's amazing the joy and the contentment and the deep sense of happiness you can have together. Now, those moments when you're with one another and you think that I don't want to be anywhere else with anyone else except the person in my arms right now, just them, that's good enough. It's more than good enough. It starts with good enough, but what happens with good enough? It actually builds and builds and builds and builds to be, wow, actually I didn't really appreciate that when I'm content and happy with somebody, there's a beautiful sense of joy and ease and peace. It's called like love. You don't love somebody because they're perfect. You love someone because they're not perfect. It's the imperfections make them lovable. Like I keep saying about the trees in the forest.
Ajahn Brahm applied the teaching from Pali Canon about separate oneself from a foolish attachment in a more modern setting. On to the second topic. Most religions treat supernatural being with great deal of respect. In fact, many give this being the highest form of worship, regard knowledge from divine source as the highest form and most reliable form of wisdom. However, in the Buddha's view of the cosmos, none of these being are worthy of worship. They are born into those states and fall from those states in line with their karma. As a result, Pali Canon would make being of this sort an object of satire. This kind of satirical attitude helped to immunize against religions that claim to come from a divine source. If divine beings can be ignorant, and that is one of the main points of the satires here, then why should their knowledge be regarded as special? One of the passages in Satta Pitaka stand out regarding this topic. There was a monk who approaches the great Brahman, who basically a higher being, and asks how far the physical universe extends. The great Brahman, somewhat like Yahweh in the book of Job, at first deflect the question by insisting on his status as the creator of all things. However, unlike Job, the monk is not convinced by this response. Instead, he knows that he didn't ask the great Brahma if he was the creator of the universe. He asked how far the universe extends. Twice the great Brahma tried to deflect the question again. And when the monk is still not convinced, the great Brahma take him by the arm, pull him aside, and tell him that he can't answer that question, but didn't want to disappoint his adoring audience by confessing his ignorance in their presence. The point of the satire, of course, is that the great Brahma is in fact a fraud, and his claim to being creator is based on his own ignorance, misunderstanding of how the cosmos evolved. However, even though that divine beings don't deserve worship, they should still be treated with manner and respect. Now, the most distinctive use of humor in Pali Canon lies in the satire on sensuality. An example from Sutta Pitaka: a young man tries to seduce a nun who was alone in the forest, speaking in poetic language of how much he loved hers, and especially her eyes. The nuns, coming from total detachment, called at his bluff and take out one of her eyes and offer it to him, saying that, "You want it, you can have it." Now, While the young man is setting up the romantic atmosphere with his sophisticated poem, the nonsense of humor with her horrific solution to the situation is unexpected, and that she's obviously having a laugh at her own bravado. Another example in the passage is when King Pasenadi is in his bedroom with his third queen Malika, and in a moment of intimacy asks her if there's anyone she loved more than herself. Of course, being a king, he expects her to say, "Yes, your majesty, you." But this is a Buddhist holy book, and Malika is no fool. She truthfully answered the king that there is no one she loved more than herself. She even get him to admit that there is no one he loved more than himself either. It showed that even kings, with all their power, cannot get what most lovers want: the assurance that the person loved the lover as dearly as the lover loved himself or herself. In conclusion, the Pali Canon is an amazing piece of literature that contains countless messages, and I would recommend it to anyone I know. Now, there is more passage in the Pali Canon that I can further explain, but I'll have to end the topic for now. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.